Welcome to the journeys of Paul and John. In the next few minutes, we will preview an adventure through the wonders of ancient times and through the inspiration of biblical times, while enjoying good friends and splendid settings. Athens is the first stop. The Acropolis is high above the city with the Parthenon, which was originally a temple to the goddess Athena. It has served as a Christian church as well as a mosque. The unique temple next to the Parthenon features lovely ladies who literally hold up the roof. Who says ladies were not pillars in the ancient world? On the backside of the Acropolis is Mars Hill, where Paul addressed the philosophers about Jesus and the resurrection. In the shadow of the Acropolis is the Agora, the heart of ancient Athens, the focus of political, commercial, and social activity. The next stop is Corinth, a sailor's town, infamous for its immorality. Paul ministered here and wrote to the Christians about faith, hope, love, and temptation. Corinth is dominated by the 1,700-foot peak, which held pagan temples with cult prostitutes. You can still see the marketplace laid out as it was in Paul's day with its stone judgment place, or bema. Here, according to Acts 18, Gallio refused to condemn Paul. Nearby is the Temple of Apollo, the sun god, with its Doric columns that were in ruins even in Paul's day. The Corinth Museum has a superb collection of artifacts, including this marble head of Emperor Nero, who persecuted the early Christians. Delphi is our next destination. Site of the famed oracle, Delphi's prestige extended far beyond the boundaries of the Hellenic world. On the slopes of Mount Parnassus, in a landscape of unparalleled beauty, lie the ruins of the sanctuary of Apollo, the Greek deity of the sun, poetry, and prophecy. Ancient visitors left their tributes at the classic treasury of the Athenians. The Temple of Apollo is where the oracle provided cryptic counsel for 1,000 years. The Panhellenic Games and music festivals were held in the Delphi Stadium, which seated more than 6,000. You'll want to tour the Delphi Museum, containing such masterpieces as the Bronze Charioteer and the Sphinx of Naxos, dating from 570 BC. The Greek city of Meteora lies amid striking mountain scenery. Perched atop huge rocks stand ageless monasteries where we can see exquisite specimens of early Christian art. The greatest of the monasteries is the richly endowed 14th century Grand Meteoran. The next stop is Vergina, where Philip II, father of Alexander the Great, is buried in the complex of royal tombs. Philip's tomb was first discovered in the 1970s, and its golden treasures are now on display for us to see. Wall paintings, ivory carvings, and everyday items chronicle the lives of the rich and famous 2,300 years ago. Philip was no King Tut, but his golden treasures are well worth seeing. Next, we'll see Berea, where Paul and Silas preached. In Berea, we remember the ancient Jewish community which was described in Acts 17. We'll spend the night at Thessaloniki, where Paul preached in the Jewish synagogue with success. Paul wrote 1st and 2nd Thessalonians to the Christians here. Thessaloniki is famous for its old city ramparts and the Galerius Arch, which rises over the Via Egnatia, the road on which Paul walked. A few miles north at Philippi, Paul and Silas preached the gospel for the first time in Europe and were immediately imprisoned. This may have been the prison. The first Christian converts in Europe, including Lydia, were baptized in this small river. In Philippi, you can see the public marketplace from Paul's day. Nearby are the ruins of an early Christian church dedicated to Paul. Believers were baptized face first in this early baptistry. Troas was a major seaport in the northwest part of the country. Here, Paul had a vision of a man from Macedonia standing and begging him, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." Our next stop is Asos, a beach resort on the coast of Turkey. There we'll see the Temple of Athena, the goddess of wisdom from the 6th century BC. The ruins sit 770 feet above the sea on the Acropolis of Asos. Most ancient cities had an acropolis or high place where they built temples. A tiny harbor is below. The great philosopher Aristotle spent over 3 years living and teaching here. The next stop is Pergamum, the third church mentioned in Revelation. Pergamum had a great ancient library like Ephesus. It probably was second only to Alexandria in Egypt. Books were usually written on papyrus, which grew in Egypt. It was scarce here, so the scribes at Pergamum were among the first to write books on parchment. Pergamum was also famous for its ancient medical center, where people were treated with sacred waters and music. They also had their dreams analyzed by priests who prescribed cures. And you thought Sigmund Freud had something new. Ancient Romans gathered in large open theaters. The largest of these theaters stands here. Pergamum also has temples and ruins dedicated to Dionysus, Athena, and Asclepius. Biblical Ephesus is the next stop. Here, Paul spent 2 years, and it was one of the cities addressed by John in the book of Revelation. Remember Acts 19? There was a riot at Ephesus by silversmiths because of Paul's preaching against the pagan idols. This is the theater where it happened. Down the street, archaeologists have rebuilt the front of the Library of Celsus, which once held the wisdom of the ancient world. Ephesus was filled with fountains, graceful public buildings, and utilitarian places such as the baths of Scholastica. The Temple of Hadrian is one of the most beautiful and interesting structures in Ephesus. Leaving Ephesus, we'll sail from the modern port of Coshadasi to visit the Roman prison island of Patmos, where John received his revelation. The island is dominated by the Monastery of St. John, high on the mountainside. The grotto below is said to be where John had his vision. The monastery has an historic Byzantine chapel and a museum which houses ancient manuscripts, including this Gospel of Mark. Monks still live here as they did 1,000 years ago. Back in Coshadasi, the shopping is great for popular Turkish items such as carpets. It's hard to find magic carpets here anymore, but the silk and wool are wonderful. Our final destination is Istanbul, Turkey, an important early center of Christian life. Istanbul became the capital of the Roman Empire and Christianity in the 4th century when Emperor Constantine became a Christian. Rome eventually eclipsed Istanbul in importance, and the East fell to Muslim invaders in 1453, but it is still a center of life for Orthodox Christianity. We'll see the great St. Sophia, the downtown megachurch of Istanbul. Built 1,500 years ago, it was the largest church building in the world at that time and was decorated by beautiful mosaics telling the gospel story. St. Sophia was later converted into a mosque and painted with quotations from the Quran. It's now a museum. Close by, we will tour the spectacular Blue Mosque, famous for its 6 minarets. The interior is decorated with more than 20,000 blue tiles and with stained glass windows. During the Roman period, chariot races and athletic events were held in the nearby Hippodrome, which was marked by this Egyptian obelisk. In Istanbul, you'll enjoy shopping in the Grand Bazaar, a covered market of over 3,000 tiny shops spread over 65 streets. A trip inside is like going back in time to meet the sights and scents of another century. This is not your ordinary mall because it was built 500 years ago. The tour began in Athens, where the gospel confronted the heart of pagan culture, and ends in Istanbul, where Christianity became the official religion of the empire. The land in between, where Paul journeyed and churches grew, and where John received the revelation, became the setting of our New Testament. In seeing these places, the Bible comes alive in new and inspiring ways. Athens to Istanbul will be a fruitful journey, a journey of understanding and renewed faith. It will be an adventure you will never forget.